What's up, tribe? How you guys doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I hope you like this video. This is Reasonable Doubt, season 1, episode 5. So this is Jax's origin story, right? We go back 16 years and we find out how we got to where we are now. We get a lot of foundational information, stuff we sort of been able to deduce, but now we kind of see it play out. So we go back 16 years. Jax is still a DA. A public defender, not a DA. She was a public defender. And we see her, trying a case. And at the end of her giving this great, closing argument and everything, the guy decides to take a plea deal. And she's like, why would you take a plea deal? We can win. I think we can win this. And he was like, listen, I'm tired of fighting. And so it sort of lets you see that she's kind of getting to a point of frustration with the job. So then we see her get her new case, and it ends up being Damon Cooper, who we know is Michael Ealy, and we see them have their first meeting, right? So their first meeting, there was a fight. He was at the bar with a friend of his. The dude that he was with got into it with another dude at the bar, and by the time the bar fight was over, somebody was dead, right? And he was like, I didn't do it. I didn't have anything to do with it. They were fighting. I was helping out my friend, but I didn't kill anybody. And she said, well, then why did you flee the scene? Because the police are saying that you fled the scene. He was like, I ain't flee the scene. I left, though. Now, to me, I feel like that's semantics. If you left, you fled. You know there was a fight. You know there was an altercation. You know the police was going to be called. You may not have known somebody died when you left, but you certainly knew there was a melee. I feel like that was semantics. But he said, I had a business. I had things I had. I'm a businessman. I had stuff to worry about. So yeah, I left. So she was like, well, he was like, well, what do I need to do? She said, you got a choice. You can either take the plea or you can go to court. And he was like, that's it. And she said, listen, let me do a little bit more studying on your case, and I'll let you know what your options are, So then we see her go home that night. Again, this is before she was making the big money and had the nice house and all that. But she had a decent spot, and we see she's on the phone with her friend. This is the weekend of Sandy's wedding, her friend Sandy. We meet the other girlfriend. So her other girlfriend is lesbian, and she was like, when are you going to tell the rest of the girls that that's not your roommate, that that's really your woman? And she was like, well, I just don't know if they're ready to handle that. She was like, they can handle it. Like, girl, like, stop tripping. But she was like, well, when you gonna find love? And she was like, girl, like, love ain't gonna find me, And you see that this is a theme as it relates to Jax and her love life throughout this episode, that she's, not open to love. She's got a little block up. She's got, her antennas are down. She ain't checking for no man, right? So the next day we see her arguing with Miguel. Now Miguel is the same DA that she's in trial against right now with her current case with Braden. But again, we found out that they went to law school together, that they go way back, and they're actually friends. Well, in this moment, they're actually friends. Now, where they are 16 years later, I don't think they're quite, I don't know if they're still at what you would call a friendship level, but they, know each other, right? But here, they're still actually friends, and they seem like they do a good job of staying in their roles during the day, but after work, they're able to put that aside and still be cool and cordial with each other, and like I said, be friends. But as she's arguing the case, she's like, listen, you really don't have enough for this to be a murder case. Like, he said, well, we have, she lays out what she feels like is her strong, her strong case. And then he lays out what he thinks is his strong case. And he actually mentions that there was a gun. It wasn't a gun. It was a knife that actually had Damon's. The knife belonged to Damon. And she was like, wait, what? And he was like, oh, your client didn't tell you that he had a knife. He brought a knife to the fight. So she ends up calling him, and she's like, yo, what the hell? Like, you didn't give me the whole story. You didn't, like, I went in there, and I feel like she was more upset that she went in there half-assed without all of the information, and he was able to kind of throw it at her like, oh, but you didn't know about this. And I think that upset her more than the fact that it happened. And he sort of explains it away, but she tells him, listen, the DA is offering manslaughter, which is 6 years. You'll probably get out in about 3. I suggest you take the deal. Like, I feel like that's what you need to do. And he was like, so that's, you don't believe in me? You don't believe in me? She was like, what? Like, what? Like, it's not my job to believe in you. It's not my job to believe you're innocent. It's my job to give you your best, you know, to tell you what your best options are. And based on the information I have, your best options are that you go ahead and take this deal. And he keeps asking her that, and throughout the case, do you think I'm innocent? Do you think I'm innocent? And it's funny because when you fast forward, he asked her that last week about Brayton. Well, do you think he's innocent? And she was like, it really doesn't matter. And he was like, yeah, but it matters to me. You know, like that's a big deal for him that she believed that he was innocent. But of course, that conversation didn't end too well. She snapped at him, and he finally was like, fine, then I'll take the deal. You don't believe in me. Nobody believes in me. So fine, I'll just take the deal. I'll take the deal. So, you know, that's kind of how that conversation ended, right? So then we see her talking to her mom, and she's looking for something to wear to the wedding. She's like, listen, I don't really have enough money, you know, to be out here just shopping for a new outfit. And her mother was like, because her mother said, why don't you, you know, because she was pulling out, she's at her mother's house pulling out, I guess, her old dresses or whatever. And the one dress, her mother was like, wear this. She said, that's a little too revealing. And her mother was like, well, if you don't want it, I'll take it. You know, I may have somewhere to wear it. And then she said, well, you know, guess who called me? Her ex, I'm assuming husband / the guy, fast forward, the guy that had the party, and she was like, I wish you would forgive Dad the way you forgave him. I forget his name, child. Peter. I think it's Peter. And so, the minute her mother says the name, like, Jax tenses up. And Jax is like, what you mean he called you? And she was like, well, I mean, you know, I think he just wanted, you know, she said, but I just can't go back there. You know, some things are just better left where they are. And again, you could just tell Jax was very tense by the whole conversation of this guy coming back around. So she finally just tells her mom, I guess I'll just go to the mall and find me something to wear. She was like, well, I thought you said you couldn't afford a new dress. She said, child, I'll skip lunch next week. I'll put it on layaway and I'll skip lunch, you know. Sorry. So then we have Sandy's bachelorette party, right? Oh, her mother also said that Sandy was always a little fast for her age. So we have her bachelorette party, and they have a stripper there, and, you know, she grinding up on the stripper, and the rest of the ladies are kind of chilling. You know, it's only like 4 of them there, so, you know, they smoking weed and drinking or whatever. And she was like, I'm sorry, I got distracted. And she was like, her old girl, the one that ended up marrying the football player, this is when they meet. And she's texting him on her sidekick, you know, or whatever. It wasn't a sidekick, but anyway, it was a flip phone kind of thing. And, you know, they're texting, and she's telling them about him. And, you know, of course, they're like, what? Like Mr. All-Pro, you know, so he was a big-time football player when she met him, right? And, he's going to come to the wedding as her +1 child. So we see the beginning of this relationship that we now see where it is today. And he actually stands her up for the wedding. And I think, again, that lets us know that this was the foundation of the beginning of their relationship, which is maybe part of the reason why Jax doesn't have a lot of empathy for her at this point. Because it's like, girl, this who he always been. But also, Sandy ends up throwing up, not necessarily on the stripper, but close enough that the stripper was like, oh, hell no. So Jax is talking to Sandy, helping her in the bathroom and stuff. And basically, it's the same conversation that a lot of people had right before the wedding. Like, am I ready for this? You know, like, am I really ready to give up and just be with one man for the rest of my life? She was like, one dick, though? One dick? You know? And, you know, Jax was like, well, you did have a good time. She said, so what you trying to say, I was a hoe? She was like, I'm not trying to say you was a hoe. I'm just saying you definitely, you know, you enjoyed being single. So it was definitely, you know, that kind of thing. But she was able to talk her off the ledge and let her know, listen, girl, you know, you gonna be all right. You know, you love him. He loves you. Y'all are good for each other. You know, the good old pep talk that your best friend's supposed to give you. So Jax is actually going through Damon's case, and she finds some things. And the biggest thing she finds in the case is she says, "Listen, you and your co-defendant look just like each other. It's very likely that the witness saw somebody stab the victim, but it wasn't you. Y'all look alike." Because he was like, the knife fell out my pocket. Like, I didn't stab nobody, but I did have the knife. He was like, I don't leave the house without my knife. I go everywhere with my knife, you know. So she goes to see him, and she's telling him, "Listen, I was tripping the other night. I'm sorry I told you to take the plea, but honestly, I think you should fight it. You know, I feel like we can put enough reasonable doubt." She was like, "Do you think that your friend was the one that might have stabbed him?" And he was like, "I don't know. I mean, it could have been him, but I don't want to accuse him of something he didn't do." She said, "That's fair. So, but we can cause enough reasonable doubt so that it's not that you did it. I mean, that he did it, but that the jury is confused and they don't know who it is and they can't convict either one of y'all." So he was like, "Okay, so you think I should fight?" She was like, "Yeah, I think you should. I think I can win this case. Like, I got you. I got you." So they joke a little bit. They find out that both of them are from LA. You know, she had a few jokes or whatever. And, you know, she tells, you know, they thought of Ice a little bit as far as from their last conversation to, you know, where he is now. And he was like, "Listen, you know, I don't really have anybody but my brother. And my brother, he can't do this without me. Like, I can't afford to be here because my brother, he ain't gonna do good with me being here." And I thought that was his cousin that's running the shop now, but that's actually his brother. And kind of what he suspected is what ended up happening. I mean, his brother ended up getting into some nefarious things, and his brother was like, "Listen, I did what I had to do to keep the shop open." So he kind of knew what he was saying when he was talking about his brother not being able to do this without him. So then she starts telling him a lot of her business. He said, "You know, I'm sorry I'm telling you all my business, but I feel like I can talk to you." And she was like, "Yeah, I get that." He said, "Well, then who do you talk to? Like, if like, who do you talk to when you needed somebody to talk to?" So she starts sharing with him some of her business. She talks about her father being a drug addict, because he told her that, you know, his mom was a drug addict and his dad worked himself to death trying to get back what their mama basically stole from them. And so she said, "You know what? My dad was a drug addict too. You know, I get it. You know, constantly disappointed me, made bad decisions, wasn't really there for me. You know, me and my mom, you know, we had the up and down sort of, you know, situation going on." So by the end of these, they, you know, had a couple of conversations. So by the end of these conversations, they are now on a first name basis. They know a little bit about each other, and he's decided that he's going to fight, right? He's going to go take the case to trial. So we see the first day of trial, and his best friend, or it wasn't his best friend, but his friend, who's his co-defendant, is being represented by old boy at the firm now. That Jax, I told you, they got some sort of history, right? Rich, I think it is. They got some sort of history. So he's there. So now we're looping him into the story. So we pretty much see everybody in this little origin story, right? So we loop him in. And he was like, "You know, I think, you know, I read through your opening statement, and I think you should really take lead on this." And she was like, "But basically, like, our clients ain't the same. Like, what you mean you feel like I should take lead?" So you already see that he's deferring to Jax, and he feels like Jax is better qualified or, you know, better prepared. So the trial starts, and we see them arguing and, you know, going through with the motions or whatever. They kind of give us a little montage of that. And she doing her thing. Like, she's definitely representing it. She's doing her thing or whatever. So what we end up seeing, though, later on, probably the next day, we see Raul and the other attorney, they over in the corner powwowing. And so she comes over there, not Raul, Miguel. She was like, "So is Miguel telling you about the award he get ready to win, you know, for my alma mater?" And they're kind of giving her the look. Well, come to find out, the co-defendant then took a plea deal for aggravated assault, and basically he's not going to do any time. He's only going to, but in exchange to testify against Damon. Now, honestly, I feel like that's where they should have took the plea, because at that point, you know that it's that the guy's going to put everything on Damon, and you really don't have anywhere to go at that point. But She tells Damon what's up. Like, she lets him know, listen, your boy done he done flipped, but I still think we can win it. I still think we can win it. And so he was like, okay, all right, let's do it. Okay, let's do it. He said, but I'm going to want to testify now. Like, I'm going to want to testify. She was like, I get it. I understand you want to testify. So she's out to dinner with her friends, and they see her on the phone with him, and she all smiling, and they were like, who you talking to? And she ends up telling them, she was like, no judgment, but it's a client. And they were like, girl, what? Like a criminal? Oh my gosh, you're not going to be one of those women that marry a man in jail. Like the whole thing. And she was like, okay, I said no judgment. I thought I said no judgment. But they end up having dinner or whatever. And so later on that night, she's working on the case. And he calls her. And she's like, what the hell? Like, they letting you make a phone call this late? And he was like, nah, my brother put some money on my books. And, I switched it out for a burner. And, actually, that happens after the co-defendant testifies. So, of course, he ends up testifying, and he tells them pretty much what they want to hear. Like, he did it, he was the one that stabbed the guy. And I feel like Jax does a pretty good job of sort of dismantling his story on the stand. I feel like if I were the jury, she would have put enough doubt in my head to be like, because dude claimed he didn't remember nothing else about that night, but he knew for certain that Damon was the one that stabbed the guy. Also, we found out that he was kicked out of school for threatening somebody's life with a knife. So, like, he has a history, right? But again, like I said, ultimately, I feel like, me personally, at that point, I probably would have, like I said, took a plea. Anyway, so then we see her and Miguel and another law school friend of theirs at the dinner where Miguel gets his award or whatever. And they basically try to convince her that it's time for her to leave the DA's office. The public defender's office. They were like, listen, you've done, you have done your time. It's time for you to move on, and her friend was like, listen, I just took a corporate job and I sleep well at night. I sleep really good at night, and she was like, yeah, but I mean, I just don't know. I'm here, that she gave the whole truth and justice speech kind of thing. So then Miguel was like, listen, do you really think I want to stay in the DA's office the rest of my career? He was like, I have political aspirations, which of course brings us fast forward. Why Jax is like, he's getting ready to run for governor. Like, this is his last case. He's trying to get one last big hurrah, and this will be enough of a feather in his cap for him to go to it. Because I know he has political aspirations. Well, this is the conversation where he lets her know, listen, I'm trying to be the first Latino governor of this state. And he even says, listen, man, you could be a power couple. Like, what you think? We could go ahead and do the do, and when we go to run for office, you're powerful, I'm powerful. We'll have our little Afro-Latino babies to, put out in front of the camera, and we can make it happen. And she was like, boy, bye. Like, boy, bye. And I think that a part of him was dead serious. Like, I think he was halfway joking, but he was halfway like, but if you with it, I'm with it, kind of thing. So then it's at night, she's going over the case or whatever, and she get ready to go to bed, and like, she gets a call, and it's him. And she was like, how you, like, they let you have a phone? And he said his brother put some money with, I already told y'all that part. So they get to talking, and he was like, well, what you thinking about? I don't know what you thinking about. I'm thinking about you. You thinking about me? Well, what about me? And child, she get to touching herself, and he get to touching himself, and next thing you know, they done had phone sex. Child, they done had phone sex, okay? I said, ooh. So things got a little deeper than we thought they got. Like, we knew they was flirty, and there was some feelings there, but I mean, So the next day is the wedding. The wedding is nice, but that's when Jax ends up having a conversation with old girl because the football player didn't show up. And she told her, she said, listen, he'll be here, don't worry about it. and they had a really good moment. She reassured her, and the friend reassured Jack. She said, listen, if you want to be with that man, if go ahead and date him. Like, love is love, girl. Like, go for it. She was like, he might be the one. He might be the one. So the next day, they are supposed to, they're supposed to prep for his testimony, and he was like, I don't want to talk about it. I just want to have a normal conversation with you. I don't want to talk about my testimony. And she was like, we really do need to go over your testimony if you want to go on the stand. He was like, let's just talk. Let's just have a regular conversation. So that's what they do. They sit there and they just kind of talk to each other about, their life and goals and ambitions and, all that good stuff. But of course, the next day he testifies. And honestly, I don't think that her direct was all that great. And I don't think he was all that prepared for cross-examination, because Miguel was able to get him to show anger. And he yelled and got loud and he cussed. And of course, that didn't play well for the jury. So she gives her closing argument, which I think her closing argument was really good. Miguel gives his closing argument, and before the verdict comes back, we see her talking to her mom. And while she's talking to her mom's ex-husband shows up. And what we're able to gather from this conversation is he was an alcoholic. They haven't been together. I think she said it's been 10 years. But he said, I'm sober for 10 years. I'm not the guy that I was, He shows up with flowers and everything. And, you could tell that her mom is on board with this. And she is sitting there. She is angry as hell. She was like, so this is a thing? Like, this is really happening? Like, y'all are really getting back together? And so she gets up and she storms out, and her mother follows behind her. Her mother's like, listen, I think the time apart was a good thing. Like, he's not the man he was. Like, he's not that guy anymore. And she was like, but he hurt people. And what I can deduce is maybe he was a violent drunk and he got physical with Jax. Because at first I was thinking maybe he had touched Jax. But now I'm like, no, I don't think he touched her. I feel like, because she was saying about her being hurt. And I'm thinking maybe he abused Jax because when he was drinking. And so the mom was like, and Jax was like, you know what? I don't know what I expected. Like, you weren't there for me then. You were never there to protect me. So why would I expect you to protect me now? So I feel like under her mom's watch, the guy was a drunk and the guy was physical with her. That's what I feel like. I don't feel like it was sexual. I feel like it was like he hit her or something like that. But of course, Jax is like, yeah, I ain't got time for this. So she gets the verdict comes back in. So she goes down to the courthouse, for the verdict, and they find him guilty. By the time they found him guilty, clearly we knew it was coming, but that thing hurt my feelings, y'all. It hurt my feelings. Because first of all, it hurt my feelings because I was like, damn, if he had just taken the plea, he would only serve like 3 years. Then I was like, dang, like, that's messed up, because you saw this budding love story, right? So of course she loses it. She goes to her mama, because we always go back to our mama, even though they just had that big fight. She went to her mama and she cried in her mama's arms. Her mama was there for her child. Then she goes to visit him, and he basically tells her, look, go on with your life. Like, that fantasy that we thought we was going to be able to live, we thought we was going to ride off into the sunset, it ain't going to happen. You live your life, you do what you do, and by the time I get out of here, you won't even remember who I am. And she was like, I don't want to do that. She said, we can appeal. And he was like, nah, we're done. So he basically gave up at that point, and we see her driving, and as we see her driving, the lights in front of her come on, and she ends up rear-ending the car in front of her. And who was driving the car in front of her? Lewis. So everything came full circle in this episode, and we still don't have all of the answers, but we do have a lot of the answers. So anyway, let me know what y'all think. Talk to y'all later. Peace.